Skill 2, Measuring Segments. Example 1, we're going to just measure the length of certain segments. The first one, we want to find what is ST. So to do that, we are going to find the absolute value from the first point to the second point. So that's the absolute value of -4 minus 8. The absolute value of the difference of the 2 points. So that's going to be the absolute value of -12, which is going to give us 12. So the length of ST is 12. And the next one, what is UV? So we have U right here and V right there. So UV is going to equal the absolute value of 10 minus 14. And you can have those in either order, it doesn't matter. That's going to equal the absolute value of -4. Absolute value of -4 is 4. So UV is 4. And that's the length. And finally, the last one, we have what is SV. So we have S and V. So SV equals the absolute value of -4 minus 14. So that's going to give me the absolute value of -18, which is going to give me SV equals +18, because that would be your absolute value. And that's it. For this next example, we're going to use this segment to find EF and FG. So we know that 8x minus 14 is EF, and 4x plus 1 is FG, and we also know that EG is equal to 59. So the entire segment is 59. So I know that 59 is equal to this first segment plus the second segment by segment addition postulate. So we have 8x minus 14 plus 4x plus 1. So I'm just going to put all that stuff together. 8x plus 4x, like terms, 12x. -14 plus 1 is a -13, and that's going to equal 59. Okay, so then the next step, I'm just going to continue solving, add the 13. This is going back to algebra class. So that's going to give me 72 equals 12x. So that means x is going to be equal to 6. So once we have our x, then we can find the other two parts. So let's find EF first. EF is equal to 8x minus 14. So then I'm just going to plug in what I know. 8 times 6, because my x is 6, minus 14. So EF, the length, is going to be 8 times 6 minus 14, which is going to give me a 34. And that would be your length. And the last one is FG. That's going to be equal to 4x plus 1. So that's 4 times 6 plus 1. 24 plus 1 is 25. So FG is going to equal 25. Example 3 here, we are going to just compare different lengths. So we have to find the different lengths and then see if they're the same, because that's what congruent means. Okay, so this first example, we're looking at AC and BD. So -2 and 5. So AC equals the absolute value of -2 minus 5, which is equal to the absolute value of -7. So AC equals +7, because it's the absolute value. So now we have to compare that to the next one, which is BD. So we're looking at right here, which is 3, and D, which is 10. So BD equals the absolute value of 3 minus 10, which equals the absolute value of negative 7. So BD equals a positive 7. Now, since those two are the same, we know AC is congruent to BD because AC equals BD. Make sure you note the differences in how I wrote that. Congruence would have to have the segment bars on it. Equals, we're talking about numbers, so there's no bar over the top of the letters. So they are congruent. Next example, we have AB, so A and B, and DE. So AB is negative 2 minus 3. So negative 2 minus 3 is equal to the absolute value of negative 5. So AB equals 5. And DE is equal to the absolute value of 10 minus 14, which is equal to the absolute value of negative 4. So DE equals 4. Since they are not the same, what we can say is AB, the segment AB, is not congruent to, so just put a slash through it, DE, segment DE. And that is because AB does not equal DE. Okay, so be careful of how you are writing it. That is different, so you need to make sure you're doing it right based on the question. For this last example, we're going to be using the midpoint. Suppose Q is the midpoint of PR. Okay, what are PQ, QR, and PR? So if this is the midpoint, that means that 6x minus 7 is equal to 5x plus 1. So if we want to find x, we just set them equal to each other because we know that they have to be the same. Alright, so now we're just going to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract the 5x over. And then I'm going to add the 7 over. And this is just algebra. Just doing what we did in algebra. So that's going to give me an x. And a 1 plus 7 is 8. So x is equal to 8. Now I'm going to take that information and plug it in to find everything else. So first of all, PQ is equal to 6x minus 7, so plug it in. So 6 times 8 minus 7, giving me PQ equals 41. Okay, now if PQ equals 41, then since this cuts it in half here at Q, then this side also must be the same. So that means that QR is also 41. So you don't actually have to do any more work at that point. Now, we have one more problem we have to solve is PR. There's two ways to do it. You can add those together and then there's your answer, or you can actually put in 8 for the x's and then put them together. But since we already know PQ and we already know QR, we can just add those two numbers together. 41 plus 41. So that means PR is equal to 82. So you don't have to do that much more work. So those are your notes on measuring segments. Go through your notes, summarize them, and then work on some practice problems. Make sure you understand these different ways to do it and the terminology we use and the symbology we use. And then you should be ready for your quiz over this material.